The U.S. And Saudi Arabia, of course, have been deeply implicated in the creation and activities of IS, Islamic State. And the U.S. has, of course, tried to distance itself with some sort of plausible deniability by having these other so-called moderate opposition forces, which they have armed and trained to no avail. That is, as far as I see it, a cover story, which is meant to deflect away from U.S. complicity in the rise of ISIS. Now that this has been exposed and that it's acknowledged that most of the funding and arms have been funneled through these so-called moderate cells to ISIS, the U.S. has to come up with a new way of intervening in Syria. Now, Russia has shown the U.S. policy to be totally bankrupt because it is accomplished in basically 1 week what the U.S. could not accomplish in 1 year. But, of course, the U.S. never wanted to disarm or dismantle ISIS. They basically wanted to keep it there to implement its policy, and they were basically conducting a fake war, a phony war against ISIS. So now that the Russians have intervened and have basically exposed the U.S. Strategy for its bankruptcy, the U.S. is going to have to find some other way to conduct its policy there. Now, this is a conundrum for the U.S. Many of their options have been foreclosed. Whether or not they will basically give up the ghost and allow Syria to combat ISIS with their Russian allies and others in the region is still up in the air. It's really not clear what the U.S. response will be. They seem to be very much at wit's end trying to figure out how to respond to the Russian initiative. I would suspect that they might, in the long run, decide that it's not worth it in Syria and go on to other fronts and redirect ISIS towards Central Asia. They are beginning to develop a staging area in Afghanistan, and I can see where the U.S. would use these stormtroopers to destabilize Central Asia and also to try to destabilize China. China's initiative with the One Belt, One Road, New Silk Road, to integrate Eurasia into an economic commonwealth goes directly against U.S. interests, and they're going to try to do all that they can to thwart that. So I would expect that the real thrust of U.S. policy will soon shift to Central Asia and in its attempts to destabilize and fragment China. And this will be seen in the South China Sea as well, because the U.S. is now saber-rattling there. So I see that there may very well be a shift in this ongoing contention between the independent sovereign states of the world and U.S. imperialism.